friends and spiritual seekers. So today we're going to be doing a video called Makeup and Magic. A lot of people do this kind of format where they talk about different subjects while they're doing their makeup, and so I'm like, why not do makeup and magic? So for this starting video, we're actually going to talk about the word magic with a K. What is it and where did it come from? I never realized how much my camera can actually zoom, so here we are. The word magic with a K is actually the old English style of spelling for how we know of the word magic without the K today. So it was like illusionists, magicians, stage magic, etc. That's how it used to be spelt in Old English. Magic with a K also has its origins in like German language and I think Greek as well. I mean, some of the letters are a little bit different, but it always ended with a K and it just meant magic. So the word magic with a K that we kind of know it as today actually started with one man, Aleister Crowley. Now, Aleister Crowley was born on the 12th of October, 1875, so a long time ago. His repertoire consisted of being an English occultist, a ceremonial magician, a poet, painter, novelist, and a mountaineer. And apparently, so I thought it was just Wikipedia putting this in, but apparently in his biography, it was important that you knew that he was a mountaineer. So Mr. Crowley termed the word magic with the K to differentiate the magic that he was doing in his religion versus stage magic, magic without a K. And how does one come to create their own religion? Well, Aleister's father, Edward, actually made a ton of money before his son was even born from a brewery. So he actually retired independently wealthy before his son was even born. So when Aleister was growing up, he was in a pretty Christian household. His father was pretty devout. The family was wealthy, so his father actually went around as a traveling preacher. Aleister apparently hated the Christian religion and just reveled in the fact that his mother called him the beast because he defied the religion so much. Besides that, he ended up actually having to go to like an all-boys like boarding Christian school when he was really young. And then a big turning point in his life was actually when he was 11, his father passed away. After his father passed away, he actually inherited a third of his overall wealth, like to him independently at 11. So as you can imagine, he started causing trouble in school, especially because he was still in the Christian school at this time, and just misbehaving, etc. He did go to college, and I believe in England, they call college like high school, what we call like in North America high school. I think they call it in college in England. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was starting to cause trouble with his teachers, always pointing out inconsistencies of the Bible and just kind of really pushing back the Christian religion on his teachers, which obviously caused a lot more problems in school. So he decided to leave college. He was getting into a bunch of trouble because he was defying the Christian religion. So he was hanging out with prostitutes, drinking, all that kind of stuff that you're not supposed to do when you're a Christian, and just kind of dropped out of school. At that time, he was getting interested in mountaineering, so he went to the Alps and went to, I think it was the Swedish Mountaineering Club, and went and climbed a bunch of mountains, pretty much. He then came back and went back to college in England, and he started studying philosophy. So during the next year or two, he spent his time studying and practicing chess. He was learning English literature, poetry, all that kind of stuff. He was still kind of going back and forth and doing some mountaineering, like in the mountaineering season, I guess, in the winter. And it said that in 1896, this is when he had his first like mystical awakening moment. And this is when he had same-sex relations for the first time and kind of discovered his bisexuality. And apparently this was a big awakening moment for Aleister. Side note, his birth name was Edward after his father, and he changed it to Aleister like later in life, like around this time that we're talking about. So over the next few years, he wasn't really doing any schooling, exploring on his sexuality. Apparently he was having sex vigorously with women, mostly prostitutes, but he was still practicing same-sex relations, even though it was illegal at the time. And it seems like during like the next like couple years, he was just kind of like doing whatever he wanted, pretty much. You gotta remember, he's independently wealthy because of his inheritance. So he's just kind of like doing whatever he wants. He also published a couple books during this time, and I guess some like poetry, like poetry books, I guess. None of them were particularly popular. And it was around this time when he started reading more books about the occult and kind of like finding out about these like guys that were, you know, doing occult things. So in 1898 in Switzerland, he met a chemist, and originally he went there to just like learn about chemistry. They were discussing their common interest in alchemy. So he joined this occult group, and because he was independently wealthy, he was able to get people to like live with him and be his like magical tutors. He could supply them with drugs and alcohol and prostitutes and like blah blah blah. So like these people were more than willing to help him in his endeavors of becoming an occult person. So he quickly rose through the ranks of this occult group because he was spending all of his time on it. He like had nothing else going on for like those few years. So he progressed pretty quickly. As far as the timeline, I think it was like 3 years or so. That's like all he did. So in 1900, he moved to Mexico through the United States, because I guess that's how you have to do it. I don't know. And he fell in love with a local woman. So he spent a lot of his time, though, like 1900 to 1903, just doing ceremonial magic and learning about the spiritual practices in Mexico and just doing his general spiritual practice. So the timelines start getting a little rough because he started pretty much just traveling the world. So the timelines are a little rough of like where he was, when kind of thing, but he went pretty much everywhere. He went to Rome, he went to Japan, multiple places in South America, he went to Hawaii, a bunch of places up into the States, and he just traveled the world pretty much. And during that time, he was learning about different religions, different spiritual practices, meeting a bunch of like gurus. Some of those experiences are documented in his like multitude of books or poems and that kind of thing. In 1903, he got married to Rose, and she just kind of like joined him on his journey around the world. In 1904, they arrived in Cairo. So apparently this trip is like the trip. This is the one where he has his big awakening, his big message from the universe to create his religion. So they arrived in Cairo. I think it's Cairo, claiming that they were a prince and princess of what, I don't know, but they were there to appraise the Egyptian deities. That's why they were there. He was also studying at this time Islamic mysticism and Arabic. So apparently when they first arrive on this trip, his wife actually starts like getting delirious and is like speaking in tongues to him that they're waiting for you, and you know, this like magic shit's gonna happen apparently. Apparently she's the one that like tells him about it. So she actually leads him to a museum. So he doesn't know what's going on. She's like having visions. So she leads him to a museum, to a stele. I think that's how it's pronounced. And it's like a big wooden monument thing. I don't know if it's specified on like who this stele thing was for, but anyway, they see the stele, and the stele exhibit number is 666, which is the number of the beast in the Christian faith. And if you remember, back in the day, that's what his mom called him, and he enjoyed being called the beast. Like he used to say like, yeah, you're right, I am the beast, mom, thanks, give me a cookie. He was like, okay, this is legit, like something's happening. She brought me here for a reason. It's 666, I'm the beast, what's happening? So sometime after this, he starts hearing voices, and he starts writing it all down. He later claims that this was the voice of the universe telling him that he is a prophet and that humanity is going into this eon phase or whatever, and he is he's the shit. He's the prophet. He's gonna be bringing us into this new age of enlightenment, and this voice is giving him all of this kind of like information, jibby jabby jazz. But he still doesn't know exactly what it is. So him and his wife go back home. He opens a like publishing company. Some of his old like occult friends that he was hanging out with, and they were like mentoring him and stuff like in the past. Apparently they have like a falling out, so he's not really like hanging out with them anymore. He's got some new friends, some publishing friends, so he's kind of doing that. He is still doing his mountaineering, which is important to note. Also had a daughter during this time, and her name was Lilith. As you know, the very first witch, her name was Lilith, so I just thought it was interesting that he named her that. So he tries to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and he is unsuccessful. Apparently there was like a bunch of drama related to like the people that were supposed to be helping him do this like trip. Apparently you can't just like go. You have to like have guides and like people go with you. So it was unsuccessful. He didn't do this trip, and apparently during this time he was getting into some trouble, doing some drugs and like blah blah blah. His wife and daughter were there at the time. I don't know how old she was. His wife and daughter were there at the time, and Rose was just kind of like sick of his shit. She went home, took Lilith home back to Europe. He went to Shanghai, and then he went to Canada, and then finally ended up in New York, where he was trying to get someone to go take him onto Mount Kilimanjaro again. You have to have specific people and like be sponsored and stuff, I guess. I don't know. This was also in like 1905, so like the rules might have been different back then. So he could not successfully get another trip to go to Mount Kilimanjaro, so he went home back to Europe. When he got there, he sadly found out that his daughter Lilith had died from typhoid. So he has great emotional distress, unfortunately. His health starts to decline. He has some affairs, or some like love affairs apparently. And anyway, his wife gives him another daughter, Lola, I think in 1907. So 1907 to like 1909, this is where accounts start getting like really unclear as far as like he was writing books, he was having situations and getting involved with like old occult mentors and stuff like that. He wrote some of these books beforehand, and he was writing some of these at that time, but they were really starting to get attention. And so these are all books that he wrote. These are based off of spiritual practices that he learned from traveling the world, and also from like the voices and stuff that he was hearing when he was like in Egypt, telling him he was a prophet and stuff. And so he apparently like wrote all of this together, and that is his books are like the basis of his religion. So his religion is called Thelema. I'm not really sure. I couldn't find any writing as far as like mnemonic on how to say it, and I watched a few videos. Everybody said it a little bit differently, so I'm just gonna go with Thelema. Sounds easier, so I'm just gonna go with Thelema. So his religion, Thelema, really starts to bloom, and I don't think this was like him going like, listen up everybody, I'm the prophet, blah blah blah, like follow me, I'm gonna lead you to righteousness, nya nya nya, you know, like most religions do. No, he just like had these books that he published because he had his own publishing company, so they just like started getting attention. So at the beginning, he was just kind of like getting attention for his books, and people were like asking him about it, but he wasn't like thinking much of it. And so I think in the closer of like in the 1909, his inheritance was starting to run out. So because his inheritance was starting to run out, people were hiring him, or like he was actually like getting hired now because he needed the money. People would pay him to protect them with witchcraft. He was taking on students of different occult practices and witchcraft, etc. So now he is known. Now he's out of like, hey, I do this because, you know, I'm fucking broke now. Hire me for all of your witchcraft needs. So apparently all of that happened in 1907. I just double checked. He also was like traveling the world, doing his spiritual thing. End of 1907 and 1908, the occult group, you know, like the very first one that he kind of got into and got initiated into, he was going to be the successor of the leader of that. So because he was becoming the successor, he kind of amalgamated the like practices of the group, kind of like amalgamating his new practices, that like Thelema stuff. He is developing this religion slash group through becoming the successor of this occult society, club, whatever. So over the next couple years, he is the successor now of this occult group goes mountaineering still and does all of these like different rituals and like blood sacrificing and whatever, which is obviously not, well, I shouldn't say obviously, it's a little bit frowned upon by the other people in his group. They're also getting a little upset because he is publishing group secrets, or like society secrets in his books through his publishing company. So he is in some hot water. Also during this time, he divorces his wife because apparently her alcoholism gets really bad. So he was like, all right, here's our kid, fucking see ya. So he starts splitting ways with this group because they're like, yeah, you're giving out our secrets and like whatever. So he's kind of like, well then I'm just gonna go do my own thing, thanks. He keeps publishing, revising books, etc. And it is around like 1913, 1914 is where he really makes this kind of like divide between like this amalgamated thing and his like own separate thing. It is also around that time when he coined the word magic with a K. So we finally have the word. This is where the word came from. It's a lot of a history, I get it, but like it's a history worth knowing. So he uses the word magic with a K to reference a paranormal phenomenon to differentiate it from stage magic. Okay, so I'm just gonna like fast forward through the next pretty much 50 years. Keeps traveling around the world, practicing his practice. He is living mostly kind of like hand to mouth and just trying to survive off of group donations and whenever he's able to like get hired, personal mentoring and stuff like that. But apparently he's like not doing the best like financially during this time. He has a bunch of lovers, a bunch of quarrels, he has fights, he's getting sued, and like a bunch of stuff happens like over the next like 50 years of his life is just like completely eventful. There's no uneventful moment that he has. Just gonna add a little purple into this, spice it up a little bit. Oh, look at that spice. Oh, I like it. Okay, let's skip ahead. Well, not really skip ahead, but like let's not look at Aleister Crowley. Let's look at his religion and what he believed magic was and how to achieve it, because it is very interesting and very important. If you're a person that's either practices or is interested in paganism or any kind of witchcraft, there's a good chance that what you are learning and studying, there's a good chance that it is based off of Aleister Crowley's religion. So there's 3 statements that pretty much encompass the ethics of Thelema. Am I going with Thelema? I can't remember what I said earlier. We're gonna say Thelema. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, meaning that adherents to Thelema should seek out and follow their true path, i.e. find or determine their true will. Number 2, love is the law, love under will, i.e. the nature of the law of Thelema is love, but love itself is subsidiary to finding and manifesting one's authentic purpose or mission. So being true to yourself. Love is good. We're guiding with love, but at the end of the day, mama's gotta get hers. Mama's gotta get hers. Yes, I want to provide love. Yes, I want to put out love. But at the end of the day, mama's gotta get hers. Every man and every woman is a star. I've heard this in a few different forms, which is to say that in the 20th century era, it is implied by metaphor that persons doing their wills are like stars in the universe, occupying a time and position in space, yet distinctly individual and have an independent nature, largely without undue conflict with other stars. There's nothing inherently evil about anything that I just said, but of course, any kind of obscure or non-traditional religion is obviously evil, and witchcraft's all evil and blah, blah, blah. So there is obviously a crap ton of information and different aspects about the religion and what Crowley preached, etc., that I obviously can't go into too much detail about it. But the most interesting part, at least it was to me, of what I found was the ritual magic, again with the K, that was part of the practice, because it all sounds very familiar. Number 1 of the ritual magic is banishing. Banishing and the removal of energies that are blocking one's true will. This is also a part of banishing anything that is blocking you from manifesting what you're trying to manifest. So number 2 is invocation, which means to identify with the deity. So as in the deity or energy that you're trying to call in, you're actually calling it in to yourself. You are identifying as this energy or as this power. Third is evocation, and this is when you are calling on the deity or calling on the spirit to come in. You're not their power, you're not containing their power or controlling their power, you're just evoking them into your space. So the fourth one, I'm not really sure how you're supposed to say it. It's like Eucharistic, I'm not sure, it's like communion pretty much, but a Eucharistic ritual. So this is where you take common objects, most commonly food, bless it by the divine, and then consume it. If you live in Western society, there's a good chance you've done this at least once. They usually call it the body of Christ. And yes, I put the mascara on after. I find it glues them onto the fake lashes better. I know, you can judge me all you want. Next is consecration, and this is dedicating an object to a specific purpose. If you think of any of your magical tools or any tools that are used specific religious purposes, even though they're like common objects, that's consecration. Consecration also includes making a building, a statue, a symbol, anything like that to a specific religious purpose is also consecration. And this one I really like to see, which was divination. So of course, I really like that. Already practice divination. I'm a professional tarot reader. Part of the reasoning of that is that he believes that unless you are a prophet like he is, you need a tool to help you connect with the divine and also receive messages of what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to guide your life by. This lipstick is not working for me. Oh, it's lip balm, that's why. Fuck. So a lot of Aleister Crowley's practice is very strongly based off of free will. You are part of the divine. You can manipulate the divine. But at the end of the day, I think the main thing we need to take away from all of Aleister Crowley, God, well, that looks horrible. So it doesn't really matter what you think about Aleister Crowley and his life or whether he was bullshitting or whatever. At the end of the day, a lot of common paganism and Wicca, different types of Wicca and witchcraft, is based off of Aleister Crowley's practices and teachings. A lot of people who have created, developed, started, whatever, of modern pagan and witchcraft religions and practices directly correlate with different teachings that Aleister Crowley created / published. Now, a lot of his teachings are a combination of different cultures, different religions, different occult practices, because he had all this time in his life that his only responsibility was to do whatever he wanted. And so he spent that time learning different religions, learning different cultures, and that's what he found. Yes, he claims that he got some visions, divine messages, and stuff like that that has guided him, but whether you believe it or not, the man spent years, decades doing nothing but having spiritual situations, spending his time connecting to the divine, connecting to the universe. Thankfully, wrote it all down. He made a countless amount of books in different formats, and they're all still available. You can still purchase them, print them. A lot of them are free online. So if you're practicing a traditional practice that is based pre-1800s, pre-1700s, and you have direct reference from that time period, then that's awesome. But if you're reading any modern books or any modern created practices, I can guarantee 100% they are referencing Aleister Crowley in some aspect or another. So he's a man that's a big part of witchcraft and modern paganism history that I feel like he's kind of pushed in the corner a little bit of the kind of old crazy guy that like created this religion. He was just a little cookie, and you know, he had all of these concubines, and you know, he had all of these sexual relationships and blah blah blah, and did whatever he wanted. And he lived his true will as much as anyone can, as much as anyone could. One of the biggest parts of his practice is about living your true will, and he absolutely did that. I'm like when I'm trying to relay some of the information, I'm like, I don't know when this happened, because like like everything was happening in 1 year. And then the next year it was like a whole bunch of other stuff happened. It's like, man, I can't even keep straight of everything that's happening with this guy. So he 100% lived his philosophy. So that's all that I have for this. My makeup look is as good as it's gonna get. I am no professional, but I think I did not too bad of a job after I kind of figured out what I was doing with my lipstick. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. My next video that I'm gonna do in this format is gonna be about shadow work. And I know everybody's talking about shadow work lately, and that's what I'm gonna be talking about. Oh my God, what is with this lipstick getting stuck on my teeth so freaking bad? Like, ugh. So do they have a black lip liner for black lipstick? Because I got a hell of a time getting it where it's supposed to go.